Welcome to People Don't Think. Let's Start Today, a podcast hosted by AmericanEagle.com founder Norb Svanascini and Al Edwards. Norb, fate has brought us together once more.
Once more, yes, sir. And thank God for this gift of
That's right.
being here.
That's right.
And beautiful day. Thank God for today, the present He gives us every day.
It's all good stuff.
All good stuff.
And as a matter of fact, it's funny, today's episode is going to be about the power of gratitude, actually. And the thing we talk about all the time, that every day is a gift, that's why they call it the present, really does fit in with gratitude, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's talk about what gratitude is. You know, people always say, oh, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that. But I was looking online in different books, particularly positivepsychology.com, which is a pretty cool site. And they talk about that gratitude is the act of recognizing and acknowledging the good things that happen in life, resulting in a state of appreciation. Norb, why do you think gratitude is so important for people?
Well, you know, it's kind of interesting because I also have read a little bit about this since you told me what it was going to be.
Right.
Which is a little different. Usually we don't read anything.
We don't talk about it at all.
But I got something that it says 10 signs that you're doing well. And one of them, the first one is you have a roof over your head. And I don't really know anybody that doesn't have a roof over their head. So you have to be thankful for that. You ate today. And obviously you eat pretty good. So I know you did.
For sure did.
But most of the people, you know, have eaten today. You have a good heart. You're still pumping. You're not, your heart has not ceased yet.
Right.
The other thing is, and I know you do this, you wish good for others. And then you have to be thankful and wish good for other people. And you know, there's been studies made that if you wish good for other people, you tend to be more positive and actually you live longer too, which is kind of interesting that all these things that we mention extend the life of somebody. So it should be, very grateful that it's so easy to extend your life. It's just be nice. You have clean water. Most of the people, especially in the U.S., have clean water. And you should strive to be better. Obviously, everybody has clothing, and we're not running around in need of clothing. And your breathing, which is important too. Same with your heart. Obviously, they're connected.
A hell of a start to the day when you're breathing, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is if you're doing well when you have a dream, and this is something that ties in with gratitude. So,
absolutely, and I love that. So let's talk about that. We're going to talk about the big things of gratitude, and also I came across a concept called the gratitude iceberg, which I thought that was very interesting, or the iceberg of gratitude. We'll talk about that for a second. But before we go into gratitude, I want to talk about one thing that absolutely kills gratitude. And like all things, Norb, that we do on this show, we always go back to The Strangest Secret from Earl Nightingale. And he said something on that record, on the original 1956 recording, that I never, ever forgot. And even as a teenager, when you gave me that record, it meant something to me. And the absolute killer of gratitude is the expression, familiarity breeds contempt. And if you really internalize that, it is incredibly powerful. And let's talk about that for a second. We all become familiar with whatever we have in our lives, right? Like you mentioned, house, car, job, all that good stuff. But when you become so familiar with things that you start taking it for granted or assume that it's always going to be that way, you get contemptuous of it, meaning that you don't appreciate it anymore. And being familiar with something tends to be a gratitude killer.
Oh, yeah. One of the interesting things, we've talked about this before, we happen to live in a country that has so much compared to a lot of the world. Obviously, there's a lot of people that, have a lot of advantages like we do, like mostly Western Europe and Asian countries that are very, very successful today. But we seem to forget that the bulk of all the countries just do not have as much as we do. And unluckily, it's a double-edged sword. When you do have something, you don't appreciate it. And when you don't have it, the only thing you're thinking about is, I want to have that, I want to have that. So, yeah, familiarity breeds contempt. It's one of the key things about The Strangest Secret. And that's why we should be grateful every day and thank for this present that we have every day. And if you combine all these things that we take for granted, that's a heck of a big present. And we should be happy that we get this gift.
It sure is. That harkens back to one of the things we've talked about a number of times, and that is that, and I said this about you, I recognized this when I was a teenager. As a lot of people most probably know, Norb is from Argentina, came here when he was about 12 years old with his parents. I always said you were the better American than any American I've ever known. And most people who immigrate here from other countries are incredibly grateful for what we have in this country, because Americans like myself, we think the whole world is like this. And a lot of people who come from maybe Mexico or other countries that maybe don't have as much as we do, they understand what a deal this is.
Oh, yeah. And, I because I was foreign born and I came here as a young kid, I really feel really American. My father was a fanatic about the U.S., and he actually had me read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and everything when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
13 years old. So what's interesting is that, when I talk to a lot of foreign-born people, which, we employ a lot of them here, and we're always amazed about how Americans don't realize what they have. And it's really kind of interesting, but it goes back to Earl Nightingale, which the audience, if they listen to us a lot, they're probably sick of listening to that name, but it's Earl Nightingale.
Let's say it one more time.
It's The Strangest Secret. And if you haven't heard it, go to YouTube. It'll really, really influence your life in a good way. So.
Well, one of the things I'm proud of, many things, but one of the particular things I'm proud of about our website, see, we're in the website business. I'm thinking about websites. Right. About our podcast, a lot of people who had never heard of Earl Nightingale now know who Earl Nightingale is.
Yeah, and this guy is, we talk about famous people and what they've done in the world, and mostly material things. Even guys that we admire like Henry Ford and Thomas Edison. But Earl Nightingale was a product of that positiveness that this country was infused with. And he saw these guys like Ford and Edison and all these other pioneers of material things, and realized that this would have never happened without positive mental attitude, because these people, and we've talked about this before, were incredibly failures. Edison, the ultimate 3,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Right.
And this is really inspiring for everybody. Everybody should realize that. We have to be thankful for what's going on in this country. And today it's kind of hard because today, it's a day that the stock market is way down. And of course, the president gets up and assures the American public that everything's okay. And some other people worry about the weather and climate change and all this stuff. And, there's such a tremendous amount of problems that it's incredible. It reminds me of a story my father told me. This used to be my father's, one of his favorite stories. And there was this man who actually got a job in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, let's say, or Oklahoma. And there was one rail, and a train would come from the east and another one from the west. So he had to manage two red lights and green lights electronically from one side to the other so the trains wouldn't crash.
Sure.
So, he was given a test on how to cope if something went wrong. The first question was, what about if a train's coming from the east and one's coming from the west, and you put the light red and all of a sudden the light doesn't work? He says, well, then what I would do is I would put the red light on the other, for the other train to stop. But what about if that one doesn't work? He says, well, then I'd get in my car and I'd just run over to one of them and basically tell them, put the red light. Well, what about when you get in your car? You know, the car doesn't start. And the guy thinks and he thinks, and he says, I'd call Maria. And the guy says, who's Maria? He says, that's my girlfriend. And what's Maria going to do? He says, nothing, but I want to tell her, look, come over and we'll watch the most incredible crash you've ever seen.
I love that.
And you know, it's a way to positive look at something that's going to be a disaster and just make, as crazy as it seems, it's always been a funny story. And I've been in business all my life. And a lot of times when things go bad, I think about that, you know, and
just call Maria.
Just look at the positive side. The crash is going to be fantastic. So
that is
and you know, we're living in an era right now where we're experiencing something this country hasn't really had much of. And, you know, when you think that people survived through, you know, the early 1900s when they had the Spanish flu, and then they had the Depression, and then it went to World War II, and then the Korean War, and all this. You know, people go through these things all the time, and yeah, they're tough. You know, I'm not going to say that you have to look at them and enjoy them because it's be ridiculous. But by the same token, just count your blessings. You know, there was an old song, "Count Your Blessings Instead of Sheep." Remember that?
I do. Yeah, that's a great song.
Yeah.
I love that story. I've never heard that before. That is the ultimate of making lemonade out of lemons, as they say,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
And going back to, I think, our last podcast, your little sign on your desk, "This too shall pass." So hopefully the train's passed with each other.
Right.
But that's a funny story. Well, you know, we talk a lot about, we have talked a lot about in the past about how thinking actually changes your brain chemistry. And they've done research that having a grateful attitude every day actually is extremely beneficial to your social well-being, your emotional well-being, and psychological well-being, that it actually changes the chemistry in your brain. And this is a little unrelated, but it is related to this. The other day I was getting gas, and it was cold, and I didn't have my coat on because I was in the car, obviously. So I got out, and I just, I'll just stand here for a second, pump the gas. And it was very cold. And all of a sudden, I started visualizing being on the hottest beach you've ever been on. Hot sand and that blazing sun. I could feel the heat on my forehead. And do you know, for a few minutes while I was standing there, I was not cold anymore. Yeah. And that is a great example of the power of the mind. And gratitude actually changes the chemistry in your brain. There's no question about it.
Well, you know, we've talked about it before many times that there's been a lot of psychological, medical studies that, you know, positive mental attitude is good for you. I hate to repeat it, but it adds an average of 4 years to your life, which is, I think, really incredible. And by the same token, you feel better. You just feel better. I mean, who doesn't want to feel better? You know, one of the things that I was looking at is that one of my favorite people of all time is Thomas Jefferson, and I'm sure that everybody that listens at least has heard of the name. If you haven't studied and read about the guy, you should, because he was really an exceptional guy. And he talked a lot about happiness. This is one of the most incredible things about the United States is that, you know, they have a declaration where it says, "In the pursuit of happiness." No other country ever had that. No country had that. I mean, how would a politician say, you know, let's pursue happiness, you know? So he wrote a lot of letters. You know, back then there was no web business and there was no anything modern, no radio or anything. So he wrote letters, and obviously his letters were incredible. He had a daughter by the name of Martha that he called Patsy. And he said that living a virtuous life is the key to happiness. He believes in just doing the right thing. Being virtuous basically means doing the right thing. And he said the most dangerous poison of life is boredom and discontent. Now just think of this. He says, according to Jefferson, the antidote to boredom and discontent is developing daily those principles of virtue and goodness, which will make you valuable to others. Now, just think of this.
Wow.
Just to make other people happy really creates a better person out of you. And he says he had no room for doubt about the means to happiness: health, learning, and virtue. These three things will ensure your happiness. They will give you a quiet conscience, private esteem, and public honor. And basically, when you take it down to the average guy, having a quiet conscience is great. If you don't do anything wrong, you feel good,
right?
And private esteem is basically that you're happy that you feel good because you've done the nice thing. And public honor, obviously he was a politician, so he was concerned about the public honor. But just for be nice to people, and people are nice to you, you just feel good about it, And
you tell the story of in the past. You told the story. There was a gentleman that was a pioneer in the TV business, Sarkis Tarzian, who brought your father here and really started this whole Svanascini journey in America. And he, when you were 16 or so, 14, maybe even younger, he said, "Norb, how do you know when you did the right thing in life?" And you couldn't answer it. And he said, "Because you feel good."
Yeah, well, you feel good about what you just did.
Yeah,
and that's
what Jefferson was saying right there.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, I mean, basically, that's if you look in the mirror and you're not unhappy about what you see, you've done a good job in your life.
You're a wealthy person.
Yeah, right.
And that's the thing. We talk about this all the time. We talk about business or maybe money or stuff like that. This show is not just about that. We're talking about abundance and positive thinking about every area of life, whether that be your job, your family, your relationships, your hobbies, your interests, your passion of pursuing whatever it is you happen to be. It's not just business and money. And we've talked about that many times before. And I just want to make that clear that, certainly money is important. They say that money is great in the area that money works in. But other than that, there's a lot of other things in life that one should pursue. So this show is not just about that. It's about anything in life being more beneficial because you're a positive thinker.
Yeah, well, and going back to the strangest secret is that he said that, being successful in life is doing something you really enjoy doing. And if you go to Henry Ford, he said, money was never my aim in life. Money comes from doing a good job. And, I think that's very, very important. One of the nice things about Earl Nightingale is that he was always preoccupied with having left money at retirement.
Right.
And he started thinking about this when he was 12 years old. And he realized that being positive in life results in you being comfortable with money. He didn't intend to be rich or anything like that. He probably was. I'm not saying that he didn't achieve that. But that wasn't his aim.
Right.
And the people that, make money for the sake of making money probably have a sickness, because I think it really feels really good when you produce something that people are using and making a better country and life,
Well, I think money comes from, like you just said, the production of something valuable to other people. It's a byproduct. It's not the end game. It's the byproduct.
Exactly.
If you produce something that makes people's lives better or easier, that, you're rewarded in that. But it's not just about money in life. It's about anything you want to apply this stuff to.
No, but money is a result of I believe in being positive in whatever you do. And we talked about Japan, about how every job there is considered something that you should be proud of, no matter if you're a janitor or anything. And
respected.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because there's something else that, the Japanese have something that they believe that employees have to derive meaning and significance from their work. And those people that actually had this meaning, that they had a significance, were more than 3 times more productive, which is really incredible. And it's the highest single impact in any variable in a survey that they took. These employees all reported 1.7 higher job satisfaction, and they were 1.4 times more engaged at work. So, just being happy about what you're doing. And I think that's one of the things, a duty of an employer is to transmit that you should be happy about what you're doing. You should enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, a good employer will tell you, do something else.
Right.
Don't be here as a kind of a slave that you're working for that check,
Right.
I mean, the check is really, it is relevant, but it doesn't create happiness unless happiness is part of doing your job.
Right. There's no question. And I think, I mean, the I've always had such incredibly respect for the deep thinking and philosophy of life of the Japanese. And they just seem to understand things of these ancient cultures that we little upstarts at 246 or 47 years haven't quite figured it out. But I think human beings by nature have to have meaning, or we're very unfulfilled if we don't feel like we're doing something with a purpose.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's so many interesting things about talking about positive mental attitude that luckily I don't think we'll ever run out of subjects. And we repeat a lot of them because I think they're worth repeating. But here's an interesting experiment that happened in New Zealand. Okay, now 50 people were given 25 Swiss francs. I don't know why in New Zealand they gave 25 Swiss francs, but this is what they say. For 4 weeks. And that's about $25 a week, U.S. money. Half of the people were told to spend the money on themselves. The other half was instructed to spend the money on someone they knew. Now, the results are really interesting on this, and I think that's something we should all have, in our minds. The groups went through a series of exercises making decisions about how much money they gave away in various scenarios. While the study subjects were making these decisions, the scientists were measuring brain activity in the parts of the brain where generously happiness and decision-making are processed. The researchers found that simply promising to be generous activated neural changes related to happiness. And the more generous people were happier overall than those who behaved selfishly.
Wow.
The reason is obvious. If you're feeling blue, be generous with your money, your time, and your resources. You'll be glad you did. And basically, it's a nice study because...
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny when you see these guys ringing the bell at Christmas time, for money. And, my wife always used to take a bill out of her and she used to put it in there. And she said, this makes me feel good.
Right.
And it wasn't a lot amount of money, maybe $1 bill, sometimes maybe $5. But
right.
The main thing was that it made her feel good, and she was a better person for it.
Right, because she knew she was helping other people with the Salvation Army bucket.
And those little things mean a lot,
Absolutely.
By the way, that was the name of a song, too, at one time. It was a beautiful song, if you've never heard it. There was an old singer called Kitty Callan.
Oh, yeah.
And she sang one of my wife's favorite songs. It was Little Things Mean a Lot.
Wow.
And it's really nice to listen. If you can dig it out, if you have Spotify or something, it'll be there,
Check that out, friends, on YouTube or whatever it happens to be. Well, this is a perfect transition because I want to talk about an idea that I saw on some of these websites called the Iceberg of Gratitude. And, they always say that, you only see the tip of the iceberg because most of it is under the water. You never see it, right? Most likely the iceberg that sank the Titanic did most damage with it underneath instead of what you can see. Yeah, without a doubt. The rivets were very brittle back then, by the way. That's what they're saying, sunk the ship. But anyway, metal was very brittle. We've come a long way with metallurgy. But if you look at the iceberg of gratitude, if you look at the top of the iceberg, we're all usually, we understand what we need to be grateful for. Our jobs, our education, our health, our family, our upbringing. But this notion of looking under the iceberg of gratitude and being grateful for other incredible things like a stranger's kindness, sunshine, a great book, laughter with a friend, a good night's sleep, a beautiful day, that is the iceberg of gratitude under the water. While we should always be grateful for those big things, job, home, car, take the time to be grateful about the little things in life.
We say this, I think, in every show. You can take that everything is a miracle or that nothing is a miracle.
Right.
And if you look at anything, they're all miracles.
Right.
They're all miracles. And that's part of the 90% of the ice you don't see.
Exactly. Yeah. Wasn't that Einstein said that you either believe everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some ways that we can show gratitude. And by the way, I read it's interesting that gratitude appears to have a domino effect. If a person experiences gratitude, they will show that gratitude, and then that person who receives it feels so good about that, and then they in turn will show gratitude to someone else, and all of a sudden you have this big cycle of gratitude going. It's like almost contagious.
It's pretty much what we talk about the golden rule. And when you think about a tree, an apple tree, you compare it to the stem. The main stem is gratitude. And then you have a branch, and the first year it gives out 1 apple, and then the second year 2 apples. And before you know it, this tree's given hundreds of apples, but it comes from that one stem.
That's right.
That's, if we become that stem, to make other people happy, just by hopefully somebody listens to this, they realize about the wonder of it all. I mean,
Right.
we are a miracle living in a miraculous world.
No doubt about it. And there's an old expression that if you want to change the world, be the person that you want to see in the world.
Exactly.
Instead of trying to change other people. Work on yourself. Work on the person in the mirror. Well, let's talk about that. How do you show gratitude? Well, a great way is to just make a list every day of 5 or 10 things you're grateful for. Again, our brains are always swirling around. We're busy. We're stressed out, whatever the case may be. Take the time to think in your head or write about what you're grateful for.
Yeah, and it can be anything. I mean, you don't have to overthink this thing. Be grateful you have 5 fingers that work. Just anything. And pretty soon you'll say, wow, I should be grateful for this. We have a thumb that is the difference between us and animals.
That's right, the opposable thumb.
Yeah, and be grateful for that. Otherwise, you'd be grabbing stuff with your hand and be very uncomfortable, and probably couldn't do the things we do. So
the opposable thumb built the entire Western world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, there's no question. Another simple way to show gratitude is just tell people you appreciate them. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Go up to someone and say, you know what? I really appreciate you as a person. I think you're doing a great job. I think you're a great person. You have no idea what that does to help other people. If you wonder, just think about how you feel when someone does that to you.
No, exactly. And the other thing is humor is very, very important. Today, this morning, there's a lady here that is one of our employees who's just a really, really nice gal. And she was looking at some products on the web, probably to buy. And I know her husband. And then let's say his name is Jim. It isn't, but let's say this Jim. So
Old Jim.
She was looking at stuff to buy. And I said, are you shopping? And she said, yeah. And I said, does Jim know about this? And she was started to laugh, and it's a nice thing to do. I would made a joke out of it, and when I meet Jim the next time, I'll tell him, and
Right.
they'll laugh again,
Right.
And the wonderful thing about this, not that it matters, but you don't have to spend money to do this. You don't have to plan it. Just be nice.
Absolutely. It's so simple. And again, that's the thing. You said something last time that really struck me. And you said, we talk about all this optimism and positive attitude and everything. What's the alternative?
Yeah, right.
What is the alternative? To be miserable? Is that what you want to do, is be miserable? So you might as well try some of this stuff.
Of course.
Because nobody wants to be miserable.
You haven't got anything to lose. It works, people. It works.
It works all day long.
You have to work it, and you have to accept also the negativity in life and the disappointments. They will happen. But again, to quote Al here for something he read on my desk, this too shall pass.
That's right. Absolutely. So friends, what we're saying, and we're saying this for ourselves too, because we're just as human as you are, take the time to make sure that you do not fall victim, and we don't fall victim, to familiarity breeding contempt. Take the time to be grateful for what you have and what you dream about and what you want to achieve. And we guarantee you're going to be better off as a result of it.
Amen.
Amen, brother. We got that one right. Yeah. So, Norb, I don't know what's wrong with the clocks, but it seems to go really fast when we start on a roll. So, but I want to thank you as always. I'm very grateful to you and the opportunity to co-host this podcast with you. And I'm very grateful to AmericanEagle.com.
Ditto.
All right.
Okay.
Well, friends, we hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you next time. And for Norb Svanascini, this is Al Edwards, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.